Hello everyone, in today's video, we're exploring the Matriceal mode of the OXI One sequencer. A mode that brings together the best of generative sequencing and manual control. Matriceal mode is a unique mode of the OXI One sequencer, designed to strike a balance between generative sequencing and fine hands-on manipulation. Unlike traditional sequencers, Matriceal mode introduces a fresh perspective. It offers us the element of surprise under control. It achieves this through separate dimensions for various parameters on each track. Let's take a quick look at the setup. On one side, we have an analog voice consisting of an oscillator, VCA, filter, and digital distortion. The OXI One is sending pitch and envelope signals to open up the VCA and the filter from track 1 of this Matriceal sequencer. If you want to learn everything about it, please refer to our tutorial on OXI One CV envelopes and modulations. On the other hand, we have choral, which is providing drums, sequenced by sequencer 4, and some extra sounds for the other tracks in the Matriceal mode in sequencer 1. The 4 tracks of Matriceal mode can be muted and unmuted independently. To do this, hold the mute button and tap on any region of each of the tracks. Now, let's take a closer look at the layout. Matriceal mode presents us with 4 tracks, each equipped with its 4x4 matrix and a set of different pages, one for each parameter. In this mode, you have the power to edit the different parameters of a sequence completely independent from each other. Parameter pages can have different length and speed and different values for each step within the matrix. This is where the magic happens. The parameters available in Matriceal mode are trigger, note, interval, pulses or pulse count, velocity, octave, gate, trigger probability, retrigger, CV pitch glide. In the track menu, you can set the MIDI channel of each individual track, the note offset for the selected track, track reset length in trigger steps, and the clear option, that will clear every value introduced on that track, all pages. Let's now delve into the practical side. We have the options of the parameter page buttons and on the other the options on the matrix buttons. Each of these aspects plays an important role in shaping your sequences. Starting with the parameter page menu, you're presented with a range of choices when you press each of the colored buttons. These choices always include division, which ranges from bar to 1/32nd ton, determining the rhythmic resolution or speed of this parameter track. You can also set the playback head direction to move forward, backward, ping-pong between endpoints, or even play in a random order. We can define the initial and endpoints of each page, and it's worth noting that the interplay of various lengths, endpoints, and divisions per page is what injects that exciting element of surprise into this mode. On each page, you're presented with a variety of parameters to choose from. Clear and random are constants, always accessible. Clear, as the name suggests, wipes out the values solely on that page, while random generates a fresh set of values in an unpredictable manner defined by the percentage below. Now let's continue explaining the insides of each of those parameters pages. Trigger, here you will select when a sound is triggered on the grid. And the len and pulse parameter respond to a simple Euclidean sequencer where you choose how many steps and how many pulses are played on the sequence. The Euclidean pattern is generated from the exact pad of the matrix you hold. Note: here obviously you define the notes to be played inside the sequencer scale, and the probability of those notes to be played instead of the default bass note. Only steps that have a different note value will be shown in a different color. Yellow for steps with higher pitch than the bass note and red for lower pitch ones. Remember, pitch values, or other sequence parameters, are not linked to the triggers like in traditional sequencing. If the trigger sequence doesn't fall in the note steps, you won't hear any pitch change. Same logic applies to other parameter pages. Decoupling triggers from notes is one of the tricks that reveals the power of Matriceal mode. Interval, this is a tricky to understand, but let's try. Instead of defining a static pitch, it is an accumulative value that defines the next interval or position in the selected scale. Every time the transport of the interval lane moves a step forward and a trigger happens, the interval value of the step is summed. Once the accumulated value reaches the maximum value, defined in the interval lane settings, it goes back to the minimum value, and vice versa. Positive intervals are shown in the pink color and negative values in red. Another example setting different length and time division for the interval page. There are several interval increments on the same step because several triggers happen on it. As you can see, intervals offer a different approach than programming notes. Pulses. This parameter allows you to repeat steps, essentially keeping the playback head of all parameters within a specific step for the number of pulses you define. Taking it a step further, you can fine-tune this by specifying the pulse type. For instance, let's say you set a step to have a duration of 2 pulses. You have the flexibility to choose how the triggers behave. You can opt for a trigger during both pulses, trigger only during the first pulse, or even have a trigger span across the entire duration of those 2 pulses. This grants you intricate control over your sequences and adds a layer of rhythmic depth. Velocity. Obviously here you define the velocity value per step. But remember, this track can be independent of the trigger since it can have different length, playback speed, and playback direction. The grid represents the velocity values with different brightness levels. Octave. This parameter encompasses 2 defining factors. Firstly, it involves setting the octave relative to the one chosen in the sequencer settings. Secondly, there's the probability aspect. You can determine the likelihood of this octave change occurring within your sequence. Gate. Here the gate value establishes how long the gate will be during the step. Once again, the grid represents the gate values with different brightness levels. Let's combine gates with velocity. Trig probability. As the name dictates here, you can set the probability of a step to be triggered, in case there is a trigger. Retrigger page. You are able to set the number of retriggers happening during that step, and the probability of the repeat occurring. You can also set the value as a skip, so that trigger will be ignored. Skips are indicated in red color. Now let's combine gate with velocity. Glide affects only CV output and defines how long it takes to glide to the next note and the chance of a glide being played. Track reset length in trigger steps. We can still keep a repetitive feeling by using the length track parameter. The sequence will repeat after the specified number of trigger steps. Notice the difference when we change the reset length from 32 to 16 steps.